feel the breeze from the subway? Isn't it delicious?
In the blinding lights of 1950s-60s Hollywood, where stars shine like distant celestial bodies, one name has never dimmed, even more than half a century after leaving this world: Marilyn Monroe. She was the woman with a honey-soft voice, an angelic smile, and eyes carrying a sadness no one ever healed. The world knows her as the embodiment of beauty, glamour, and iconic Hollywood allure, but very few truly understand what she paid to become a legend. And this is the real story behind the stage lights. A life as beautiful as poetry, but as painful as a wound that never closed. 1. From abandoned child to America's ultimate sex symbol, Marilyn Monroe was born Norma Jean Mortensen into a world filled with chaos and a devastating lack of love. Her mother, Gladys, struggled with schizophrenia. Her father, never once present. As a child, Marilyn moved between foster homes, relatives, and orphanages like an unwanted object passed around from hand to hand. Never knowing a true home, Marilyn grew up with a deep-rooted insecurity. But from that loneliness came an overwhelming desire to be seen, to be loved, to be wanted. At 16, she married simply to escape foster care. The marriage had no love, only necessity. Later, during World War II, she worked in a munitions factory where a military photographer noticed something extraordinary in her: a radiant smile, a beauty impossible to ignore. In that moment, Norma Jean disappeared. Marilyn Monroe was born. 2. Hollywood's shadowy contracts. The price of becoming Marilyn Hollywood in the 1950s was a kingdom run by powerful men in spotless suits. Men who decided who rose, who vanished, and who became unforgettable. When Marilyn stepped into the world, she discovered its darkest truth. Fame wasn't earned by talent alone. It required sacrifice, submission, and secrets. One of Marilyn's earliest contracts didn't involve paper at all. It was an unspoken exchange. She needed chances. They needed a beautiful face to control. Several studio executives pushed her into late-night meetings that had nothing to do with scripts. Marilyn later confided to a friend, "I learned early that if I didn't protect myself, no one else would." But she didn't let that world break her. She studied acting obsessively, practicing her breathy voice, not because she was naturally whispery, but because she learned it softened the room, made people underestimate her, and gave her control. Her dumb blonde persona was a weapon, not a weakness. That was one of her greatest secrets. 3. The rise to stardom, and the loneliness behind the flashes. When Gentlemen Prefer Blondes hit theaters, Marilyn became America's obsession overnight. Fans saw a woman glowing with confidence, but off-screen, she was terrified of failing. She often arrived late to set, not because she was arrogant, but because she had panic attacks in her dressing room. She would stare at herself in the mirror, gripping the table, whispering, "You can do this. You're Marilyn now." Her co-stars didn't know that she carried a little notebook everywhere. She wasn't writing love letters or poems. She was writing every cruel thing people said about her, so she could remind herself what she had to overcome. Another secret. Marilyn insisted on being photographed from her left side. She believed it was the one angle that hid childhood trauma, an old scar on her cheek from an abusive caretaker. No one in Hollywood dared mention it. Her beauty was legendary, but it was also armor. 4. The secret intellect. The Marilyn no one believed existed. Few knew that Marilyn owned over 400 books, from Dostoevsky to Freud to poetry collections. She carried novels to photo shoots, to sets, even to parties filled with celebrities who preferred champagne over conversation. One evening, a famous actor mocked her for reading Rilke. She simply smiled and said, "If I don't feed my mind, someone else will own it." She secretly took night classes at UCLA under a different name. She didn't want the world to know she wanted more than beauty roles. She feared they would punish her ambition. That's the cruel irony. Marilyn wasn't just fighting to be seen. She was fighting to be believed. 5. The lovers, the betrayals, the heartbreak behind closed doors. Joe DiMaggio, the man who loved her too hard. Joe adored her, but his love was heavy. He couldn't stand the men staring at her posters. The famous subway dress scene from The 7-Year Itch. That fight lasted for days. Marilyn cried the entire ride home. She whispered, "He loves me, but he hates what the world sees in me." When they divorced, Marilyn collapsed in her lawyer's office, saying she had failed at the only relationship where she felt protected. Yet Joe remained the one constant in her life. He tried to rescue her from the Hollywood machine more than once. And yes, the rumor is true, he planned to remarry her the very week she died. Arthur Miller, the man who broke her soul. Marilyn believed Arthur was her intellectual salvation. She thought he saw her mind, not her body. But once they married, Arthur became frustrated by her emotional fragility and insecurities. The most painful secret. Marilyn found Arthur's notebook where he wrote he felt ashamed and disappointed in her. She told no one. But after reading it, she was never the same. She felt like she had failed as a woman, a wife, and an artist. That was the moment her darkness deepened. 6. The final years. Addiction, conspiracies, and the night that still haunts Hollywood. By the early 1960s, Marilyn had become too powerful and too uncontrollable for Hollywood's comfort. She was fighting studio executives, demanding better roles, refusing to be the joke blonde anymore. But behind her newfound strength was a storm. She battled insomnia so severe she sometimes stayed awake for 48 hours. Doctors prescribed sleeping pills, then pills to wake her up, then pills to calm her down. Marilyn once joked, "I don't take drugs, they take me." But her darkest secret was the phone calls she made late at night. She often called friends just to hear a voice, sometimes without saying a word. She confessed, "I feel like I'm disappearing, piece by piece." The night she died remains one of Hollywood's most debated mysteries. Too many phone calls erased, too many details missing, too many powerful names erased from police notes. But here's the truth hidden beneath all theories. Marilyn died long before her heart stopped. She died the moment the world loved the image more than the woman. 7. The legacy. Why Marilyn still haunts our culture. Marilyn Monroe became eternal, not because she was the most beautiful woman in Hollywood, but because she represents something deeper. A woman fighting a world that only loved a version of her that wasn't real. Her life was a montage of secrets. Secrets about her childhood, her battles, her brilliance, her loneliness, and her strength. And that is why, decades later, we're still trying to understand her, still trying to hear the real Marilyn beneath the glamour, still trying to answer the question she never could. Would anyone love me if I stopped being Marilyn?